Hi everyone, Dr. Nemechek here. What I want to tackle on this video is about histamine. I keep saying my histamine levels are high, and there's a lot of providers out there that are telling people you're eating too much histamine. And just, that is not the case at all. All right? Now, histamine is a chemical that is naturally released by a certain subset of white blood cells. They're called basophils. And these basophils, when they get activated by something foreign that's not supposed to be in the body, they change. They are activated and they change their shape and so forth. And we now call them mast cells. Okay? Now, what I have here is CBC, complete blood count of a patient. So it gives you your white cells, red, hemoglobin, hematocrit. Now down here in your blood counts, they break out so different types of white blood cells: neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. Okay, so here, and this is by percentage. You can say it's a very small percentage in the tissue in the bloodstream. Now, most of our white blood cells are not circulating. Only 3 to maybe 5% are circulating in the bloodstream. The rest of your white blood cells are parked in the tissues. Now, basophils in particular, you could think of them like sentries, where you're going to find them is at the barriers of your body. So they're in the skin, and they're around your blood cells, your arteries. They're in the skin. They're in your respiratory system, so nasal passages. You can tell I'm a little congested today. Nasal passages in your lungs. And then they're in the intestinal tract. Now, the vast majority of your white blood cells are in your intestinal tract. This is a cross-section of a small intestine. This is of a mouse. Ours is built the same way. Okay, this is where you have food and stuff in here. It gets absorbed on these villi. And then you have a little barrier here that's only 1 cell thick. And that's all you need when things are functioning normally. And then 70% of all the white blood cells in the body, including your basophils that are going to turn into mast cells, are in this band of tissue that surrounds the small intestine. That's almost 3/4 of your entire immune system is wrapped around, I can't get my mouse to work right, wrapped around the small intestine. Now, everything's fine. There's no histamine being released here when your gut bacteria is balanced. Okay? So normally you've got these families of bird bacteria are up here, the fish bacteria are in the colon. It's almost sterile in the small intestine. Now in the colon you'll have about 4 trillion bacteria, so it's a huge differential. But then we get this thing, it's called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where you get too much bacteria up there. They'll often talk about it as dysbiosis. It's this vague kind of term that researchers use. But basically they're talking about SIBO. You get too much bacteria up here, stuff leaks through the seams, really, because it's not built for it, okay? Leaks through the seams, right into 3/4 of your entire immune system. And these basophils will see these foreign molecules from bacteria and viral particles and fungal particles and food particles, and will be activated as an alert system and release histamine amongst some other chemicals. But the histamine then goes out through the body and the bloodstream. That's what these providers are measuring. You get histamine. You might see it in your skin or your face. It gets red. Okay, that's coming from leaky gut. That's what's triggering all of that. Okay. I hear almost weekly, is my fish oil causing my histamine levels to be too high? The connection between fish and histamine, there's a thing called a scambroid reaction. It's an old-fashioned term, But basically, if when preparing sushi, if the raw fish isn't refrigerated properly, you get bacteria growing on the gills. These bacteria make huge amount of histamine. It gets in the meat, they chop it up, they don't cook it, you eat it, and people are having these horrible histamine reactions. It wasn't really the fish. It was poorly refrigerated fish, okay? And the bacteria doesn't just grow in the meat. The bacteria specifically grows on the gills of the fish, okay? So that does not mean anything that's fish in any way has a lot of histamine, okay? Do some foods have more than others? Yes, it does. But that's not where your histamine is coming to. The amount of histamine you ingest is just a tiny little bit compared to the massive release here into the bloodstream that can happen. So your histamine, if people say your histamine levels are up, if you aren't having a overt asthma attack or horrible allergic reaction to, ragweed or something, it's coming from your intestinal tract. That's where the histamine's coming from. And when they talk about a mast cell disorder, it's not that the mast cells are broken or something or misbehaving. It's that you have leaky gut activating a normal, healthy mast cell, which is what it's supposed to do, is react as, a warning system and release histamine. Okay? So, now, there are drugs, mast cell stabilizers they can use to try to calm that down. Sure, I have no trouble with that. But that's not the source. The source is your leaky gut. Okay? Now, with that, what can happen to make this even worse is when you get leaky gut enough, those white blood cells are regulated by your vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve can fail. So, you got to fix the leaky gut with, in kids, inulin, and adults, rifaximin. And then in some of those cases when they're better but not completely better, we will add a vagus nerve stimulator to help just shut down that excess inflammation, and typically the whole thing stops. Okay, it's very predictable when you know what's driving it. So I hope that's helpful to you all. Otherwise, everybody have a good day. Bye.